A very good morning. Welcome to this edition of News for the Hearing Impaired. I'm Rukma and with me is Manisha. Let's begin with the headlines. Shraddhanjali and Sarvadharma Prarthana Sabha in memory of first death anniversary of former Prime Minister late Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji at Sadaiv Atal Memorial in Delhi. President, Vice President, Prime Minister along with several other leaders to pay tribute. In Jammu and Kashmir, Independence Day celebrations held in smooth and peaceful manner. On the occasion, Governor Satyapal Malik says the identity of Kashmiris and other communities is not at stake due to scrapping of Article 370 and 35A. Indian Army refutes claims of Pakistani Army that 5 Indian soldiers have been martyred in cross-border firing across the LOC. Army has said a ceasefire violation by Pakistan was carried out by Pakistani forces in Nogam and Krishna Ghati sector, which was responded to appropriately and befittingly. Pakistan Army admits that 3 of its soldiers have been killed by Indian Army. In response to Prime Minister's call to make India free of single-use plastic, a massive public campaign will be launched engaging all stakeholders, says Minister for Environment, Forests and Climate Change, Prakash Javadekar. The minister was addressing a gathering to celebrate 73rd Independence Day in Sao Paulo, in Brazil. In international news, US President Donald Trump urges his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to meet protesters in Hong Kong who have been demanding democratic reforms. Hong Kong has been in turmoil for weeks, with protesters causing chaos at the airport earlier this week. In cricket, Australia were 34-1 in their first innings against England at stumps on the second day of the second Ashes Test at Lord's yesterday. Earlier put into bat, England were all out for 258. Now for our top story. Today is the first death anniversary of former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Shraddhanjali and Sarvadharma Prarthana Sabha will be held in memory of his first death anniversary at Sadaiv Atal Memorial in Delhi. President, Vice President, Prime Minister along with several other leaders will pay tribute to the former Prime Minister. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the 10th Prime Minister of India and was a Member of Parliament for 4 decades. He was one of the main founders of the Jan Sangh. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was also the first Prime Minister of the NDA government to complete 5 years of non-Congress Prime Minister's office without obstacle. In a landmark military reform, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced that the country will now have a Chief of Defence Staff as head of the Tri-Services, a proposal pending since the Kargil conflict in 1999. The Prime Minister said that as head of the 3 services, the Chief of Defence Staff will ensure synergy and provide effective leadership to the armed forces, which is the need of the hour as the country deals with evolving security challenges. While asserting that peace and security are essential to development, the PM said India will not be a mute spectator to acts of terrorism in different parts of the world. Without naming Pakistan, PM Modi also called for countries that stand for humanity to unite against forces sheltering, promoting and exporting terrorism. The Prime Minister spoke on how his government has a clear policy on combating those creating an atmosphere of terrorism, violence and fear, and signaled that his government is going to deliver on long-pending military reforms. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is optimistic that India will achieve the goal of a $5 trillion economy in 5 years. He stressed on making Indian farmers exporters and ensuring every district from India exports to the world, while underlining how India's economy has strong fundamentals and has succeeded in keeping inflation under control and maintaining a high growth trajectory by undertaking reforms like GST and IBC. He also stressed on the need for respecting wealth creators, instead of looking at them with suspicion or looking down upon them. The Prime Minister said GST subsumed nearly 1.5 dozen central and state taxes and realized the dream of one nation, one tax. The country has also achieved one nation, one grid in the energy sector. Much alike the entire nation, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh too celebrated the Festival of Freedom, Independence Day, with much fervour and enthusiasm. While Srinagar was the venue for the main function of the tricolour unfurling in the state, every other district headquarters witnessed the unfurling of the national flag and functions celebrating the day. Colourful programs were also organised on the occasion of Independence Day at the stadium. The artists displayed the vivid culture of Kashmir. BSF and CRPF personnel in Srinagar called Independence Day a special occasion. Governor of Jammu and Kashmir Satyapal Malik said that abrogation of Article 370 would neither create any danger on the identity of the state nor disturb the culture. Rather, it would create new horizons for development of the region and would fulfill the aspirations of its people. The governor made it clear that terrorism cannot be tolerated, and with the action of the security forces, the defeat of terrorists is guaranteed. And on the eve of Independence Day, President Ramnath Kovind hosted an at-home function at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Several dignitaries, including Vice President Venkaiah Naidu, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, attended the function. The Indian Army has refuted the claim of Pakistani Army that 5 Indian soldiers have been martyred in cross-border firing across the LOC. The Army has said that ceasefire violation by Pakistan was carried out by the Pakistani forces in Naugam and Krishna Ghati sector, which was responded to appropriately and befittingly. But none of our own soldiers have either got injured or have been martyred. Earlier yesterday, Pakistani Army admitted that 3 of its soldiers were killed in the ceasefire violations in Poonch. The Indian Army had warned last week that the Pakistani Army ISPR Twitter handles are trying to spread misinformation and falsehoods in view of Article 370 being revoked in Jammu and Kashmir. In response to Prime Minister's call to make India free of single-use plastic, a massive public campaign will be launched, engaging all stakeholders. Minister for Environment, Forests and Climate Change, Prakash Javadekar, will review all the initiatives and campaigns in this regard and chalk out a concrete plan to realize the target. The minister was addressing a gathering to celebrate 73rd Independence Day in Sao Paulo in Brazil. Police proceedings against 4 Indian crew members, including the captain aboard an Iranian oil supertanker, has ended, and they have been released by authorities in Gibraltar. Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan said that the Ministry of External Affairs spoke to High Commission of India in London, and they have confirmed all 24 Indian crew aboard VLCC Grace 1 have been released by Gibraltar authorities and are free to return to India. A total of 28 crew on board the vessel include majority Indians but also Russians, Latvians and Filipinos who had spent over a month in detention on board the ship since it was seized in early July. US President Donald Trump has urged his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to meet protesters in Hong Kong who have been demanding democratic reforms. Hong Kong has been in turmoil for weeks, with protesters causing chaos at the airport earlier this week. President Trump had previously appeared to suggest that he himself should meet his Chinese counterpart to discuss the crisis in the city. Millions of Hong Kong citizens have taken part in 10 weeks of anti-government protests. In cricket, England managed to get the wicket of David Warner in the 13 overs they bowled at Australia on day 2 of the second Ashes Test at Lord's on Thursday. Australia trailed the hosts by 228 runs with 9 wickets in hand. Earlier, England were dismissed for 258 by Australia in the second Ashes Test at Lord's yesterday. And that's all we have for you in this edition of News for the Hearing Impaired. Namaskar.